Donald Trump has built his campaign on prejudice and paranoia. He is taking hate groups mainstream and helping a radical fringe take over the Republican Party.
They keep saying it, you're racist. It's a tired, disgusting argument. Hillary Clinton isn't just attacking me. She's attacking all of the decent people of all backgrounds, doesn't matter, of all backgrounds, who support this incredible, once-in-a-lifetime movement.
Dueling speeches today from the two major candidates, one in New Hampshire, one in Nevada, dealing with race and temperament. Hillary Clinton, in an interview last night, said she would do more interaction with reporters. Today, after the speech she delivered, reporters tried to ask her about whether Donald Trump was a racist. Here's what she said.
I want you to offer it to all the press. They are so wonderful, so cooperative, so hardworking, and all deserve a piece of chocolate.
Secretary Clinton, any comment on your husband?
You'll love this, Jen.
Secretary Clinton, any comment on your husband leaving for president?
Everybody try one.
So the chocolate's good. Let's bring in our panel. Steve Hayes, senior writer for the Weekly Standard. We welcome Heidi Prisbilla, senior political reporter for USA Today. Lisa Booth, columnist with the Washington Examiner, and syndicated columnist Charles Cratham. Okay, Heidi, what about these speeches? Obviously, both of them pretty pointed, and Clinton kind of laying it out there about the alt-right and how she says Donald Trump has led to fringe groups taking over the party.
Well, you can certainly put Trump's speech in the category of preemptive, right? Because he knew she was about to come out with this speech blasting him as basically being the leader of a new racist movement. In terms of the timing, Clinton's had a very tough week in terms of the foundation news that's been coming out and the poll numbers tightening. We all know there's no official Trump connection to these groups. At the same time, he's leaving her this opening. He's leaving her this opening because he's not doing what John McCain did in 2008, which is when an issue comes up about accusing Obama of being Muslim or whatever, he's not specifically disavowing that like McCain did. And whether he knew that the tweets were coming from white supremacist groups or not, yeah, he's not, drawing that line and repudiating them. And I think that the reason why is that there's also political risk in that, right? He'd inoculate himself from what she's accusing him of, but at the same time, it's real that there are these groups out there supporting him. There were some of them running around at the convention, and there's an opportunity cost to also slapping them in the face.
Yeah, and Clinton camp is out with a web ad video, Lisa, that connects KKK members who say they support him, and kind of goes on and cites David Duke and others. What about this from the Trump perspective?
Well, yeah, I mean, look, I think those are pretty weighted attacks, and obviously is not something he wants to face. But look, I think saying the word bigot, I think, is a little bit of a bridge too far. But when he says that Clinton sees people as sees people as color only as votes and not as human beings worthy of a better life, I think that line of attack is smart, because if you equate that with the fact that black Americans living below the poverty line has increased, real household income for black Americans has decreased, workforce participation has dropped for African Americans, that's a stronger line of attack. But politically, what I think is interesting is the fact typically the conversations regarding minority voters stems with Hispanics, but I think it's interesting to look at African American voters and the focus of both Hillary Clinton and the Trump campaign. 538 did a really interesting analysis about a year ago regarding the African American vote, saying that if it returned to pre-Obama levels of turnout and partisanship, Democrats would lose Florida, and the overall margin of victory would be cut in half in Ohio and Virginia.
Charles, I mean, will this day, these speeches, have an effect on an electorate that seems like it's getting to a decision?
I'm not sure it's going to have a big effect. This is the old Democratic playbook where you accuse your opponent of being racist, to use ad hominems. I mean, it is slightly over the top, especially there was a point in the speech where she said the rise in bullying in schools, alleged, as a result of his rhetoric. I think that's rather sort of National Enquirer type stuff. And I do think there's also a problem. There is guilt by association, yes, but that is always true. Politicians are always appearing on stages and welcoming people who have unsavory histories. And I would say that for Hillary, she should be a little bit careful, since her support for Black Lives Matter. Does she really want to be associated with a group that chants about killing cops? And nobody would accuse her of supporting that, but that's always a risk. So it's a cheap kind of political warfare. There are, of course, incidents, the Mexican judge story and all that even Paul Ryan had to admit was a form of classical racist speech. But I think this is the old story. I'm not sure it's going to have an effect. And surely his calling her a bigot is not going to have a lot of effect either. I think we're at the lowest, we're at the bottom of the barrel of a race that we knew would be low and dirty, and that's exactly where we are now.
Meantime, a judge has ruled in favor of Judicial Watch, saying that the State Department has to come forward with these additional emails by September 13th. In this Clinton email investigation. Over the past few weeks, we've heard Clinton campaign spokespeople say there is no smoking gun of any quid pro quo from the Clinton Foundation or the State Department. Last night, Secretary Clinton said, "I know there's a lot of smoke and there's no fire." Here's what Trey Gowdy said today about the investigation and the FBI and what exactly Clinton's lawyers did about the deleted emails.
Remember, James Comey said she was not indicted because he didn't have sufficient evidence on the issue of intent. I didn't see any questions on the issue of intent. He said he didn't go forward with charges because she didn't have specific criminal intent. I didn't see any questions on that. She said she did it for convenience, but I didn't see the follow-up questions in the interview I read. Why did you delete emails that you kept for 1.5 years? And they didn't just push the delete button. They had them deleted where even God can't read them. They were using something called BleachBit. You don't use BleachBit for yoga emails or for bridesmaids emails. When you're using BleachBit, it is something you really do not want the world to see.
By the way, BleachBit is this technology that essentially shreds files, hides their contents, prevents data recovery, overwrites the free disk space to hide any previously deleted files, and they claim maintains privacy. Obviously, it keeps the FBI out of those spots too.
Yeah, and I think that's an important point that Trey Gowdy just made. There are apparently other details of just what lengths the Clinton team, the Clinton lawyers and others, went to make sure that nobody would ever see these emails that they had decided to, that they had control of, that they had decided to delete. And I think that's a significant point, in part because of the context in which this whole discussion takes place. When you have Hillary Clinton, who didn't secure her emails during the time that she was Secretary of State, or for, as Gowdy points out, for the year and a half after she left office, suddenly when she learns that Congress and other government agencies are interested in seeing them, decides to go to these extreme measures, I would say extraordinary measures, to make sure that nobody will ever read them again, I think is suggestive. And it goes back to the press conference that James Comey gave on July 5th, where he said he made two statements within moments of one another that were basically in tension, where he says, on the one hand, we have no evidence that they did any of this on purpose, that they were trying to hide anything, and then just moments later he said, but the lawyers took these pretty extraordinary steps to make sure that we couldn't do any forensic recovery. And I think we're likely to see that tension between those two statements and the intent question that Trey Gowdy raised get a lot more attention here in the coming days.
All right, Quinnipiac is out with this poll, Heidi, and if you look at question 6, which is the honest and trustworthy question, would you say that Hillary Clinton is honest? Quinnipiac has yes, 20%. Is that, that's independent votes, 20%, 29% all likely voters, 66 not honest. This falls into that category. Donald Trump, obviously, his numbers are upside down as well.
It does, although I think her numbers had been hovering around 60, his numbers had been hovering around 60, so I think this is evidence that this latest round of controversy over the foundation is hurting her. It's hurting her numbers. We never thought that she would necessarily recover in the span of this election, but what we're seeing is that this is going backwards for her as well. And I think that it just, it's an example of just how the Clintons throughout all of these controversies, like with the creation of the server or the Wall Street speeches, have these completely self-inflicted, ethics-related wounds that they just don't have an ability to perceive beforehand how it's going to be perceived by the public. They think, in the case of the foundation, we're doing something that is for a good cause. We're doing this for charitable reasons, and therefore it's okay to kind of skate on the edges of what's normally permissible or acceptable in terms of the conflict of interest.
The campaign, I think, believes that this speech today puts her back on track, but we'll see if it has that influence in the polls. Next up, Donald Trump and immigration, his former opponents speaking out on his change of tone.